Hello, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to make some predictions about the upcoming match days in the South American CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers for 2026. This is, in my opinion, the best qualifiers in the world. Every game is intense, every game is a rivalry, every game is fought as if it's a final. We saw in the Copa America and we saw in all of the matches leading up today just how intense the South American qualifiers are. This time there's 10 teams vying for 6.5 spots for the World Cup. This is up from 4.5 in the previous editions. More teams make it to the World Cup, but there's no less intensity in the games. It's been a delight to watch. To recap the standings, in first place we have the World Cup champions Argentina with 18 points, followed by Colombia, the only undefeated team, with 16 points on 4 wins and 4 draws. Third place, we have Uruguay with 15 points. Ecuador has 11 points, receiving a 3-point deduction before the qualifier started. Brazil and Venezuela are tied with 10 points. Paraguay and Bolivia follow with 9 points each. Chile in second last with 5 points. And at the bottom of the table is Peru on 3 points. The only team that has yet to win in the qualifiers to date. Reviewing the last match day, Bolivia was the team of the match day, receiving 6 points, 3 at home, 3 away. An amazing 4-0 win against Venezuela, who were impressive in the Copa America. However, Bolivia transformed into a prime Brazil, beating them 4-0 in their first game in El Alto, which is 1,000 feet taller than their infamously high stadium in La Paz. They won away from home 2-1 against Chile, and you can just see what it meant for them with a crucial away victory. They don't get too many of those. Colombia received 4 points. They tied away at Peru before returning back to Barranquilla and beating Argentina 2-1 in a very spicy match where they got revenge for their Copa America final loss 2 months prior. Paraguay also received 4 points, tying Uruguay away from home and beating Brazil at home in a very, very impressive effort that put Brazil into dire straits, and they need to respond with a big match day this time around. Ecuador, Argentina, Brazil had 1 win at home and 1 loss away each. Uruguay had 2 uninspiring ties versus Paraguay at home and away at Venezuela. In what was Luis Suarez, his last match was against Paraguay, and he retired from the team and had some very controversial statements against Bielsa in the recent weeks. More on that later, but there is some internal rift within the Uruguay camp. Peru tied Colombia at home and lost away to Ecuador. They still have no wins. Venezuela lost 4-0 away in Bolivia and tied at home to Uruguay. And Chile, the only team to lose both games, with a 3-0 loss in Buenos Aires before losing at home 2-1 to Bolivia. Gareca is having a very rough start to life in Chile. In the upcoming match day, we have some very, very spicy fixtures. Of course, there's a home and away match for each team for a total of 2 matches each. Into the first match day, which is on Thursday, October the 10th, we have Argentina versus Venezuela in Caracas. This is a very one-sided fixture where Argentina has won 24 encounters. There's been 2 ties and Venezuela has only lost twice. Of course, Messi is coming back to the team after not being around in the last qualifying fixtures. We do have a suspension in Dibu Martinez. He will not be there this time around as he has received a 2-match suspension for his antics both after the Chile game and after the Colombia game, where he was very angry at the result and lashed out, and he is serving a 2-game suspension. There are a lot of injuries in the Argentina camp. Dybala will not play, neither will Garnacho, Acuna, or Nico Gonzalez. those injuries will be very crucial, but they will be looking to bring in some fresh talent, including Nico Paz, the young Spanish-born player for Real Madrid, who's currently on loan to Como. It'll be interesting to see how they integrate these new players into the Scaloneta. Venezuela is winless in 4 matches in Argentina. That should continue this time around. Messi's back. Messi's on form. You know Messi's going to want to have his say coming back into the mix, and Argentina needs a big response after losing to Colombia. I don't think there's any doubt that Argentina is heavy favorites going into this match, and I think that they will win, and Venezuela's winless streak will continue. The game of the match day will be Chile versus Brazil in Santiago. This is a match that is very historically one-sided for Brazil, as Brazil has won 54 of the encounters. They've tied 13, and Chile has won 8. Brazil has also won the last 4 meetings between them, and Chile has 2 wins, 2 ties, and 4 losses at home against Brazil. The last time Chile won at home versus Brazil was in 2015, when their golden generation beat Brazil 2-0 in the 2018 World Cup qualifiers. This team right now is a far cry from the golden generation that won back-to-back Copa Americas just under a decade ago. Gareca has opted not to call a lot of the old guard. Arturo Vidal was very critical of this recently. He's currently playing for Colo-Colo in Chile, and he was playing in the Copa Libertadores quarterfinals, and he made some controversial comments about the caliber of players that exist today in Chile is not up to par with the old generation, and the old guard is still the best players to try and take Chile to the World Cup despite failing in the last 2 attempts. I think Brazil will win this game. They always respond with their backs against the wall. They just lost to Paraguay. They've been having a very abysmal World Cup qualifying campaign with 3 wins, 1 tie, and 4 losses. Anytime with their backs against the wall, Brazil respond, and this is a dangerous position for Chile to play Brazil in. And I believe Brazil will win this game in what should be the game of the match day. Next, we have Bolivia versus Colombia in El Alto, Bolivia's brand new high-altitude stadium that is on top of the world, the highest stadium in world football. Bolivia has won 1 out of 16 matches against Colombia, and they haven't won any in their last 3 games, with 2 ties and a loss. In this scenario, I will be going with a draw. Colombia is very good. They arrived very early to Bolivia in order to get used to the altitude, arriving on Sunday 4 days before the fixture. This means that they'll be well prepared. Colombia is currently the team of the moment on 29 unbeaten game streak. I believe that this will be a draw, and that would be a massive point for Colombia to take away from Bolivia as they continue their undefeated streak. Ecuador versus Paraguay in Quito. Paraguay leads this fixture historically with 22 wins, 7 ties, and 12 losses against Ecuador, but the last time they won at altitude in Quito was in 1988. Ecuador is currently an excellent young team. I believe that they'll take all 3 points away from this fixture. Paraguay proved themselves against Brazil. However, it was just a one-off game. They've been relatively poor in the last couple of years. I predict that they will falter at altitude against a good young squad in Ecuador. Ecuador will win this game. Peru versus Uruguay in Lima. Peru tied Venezuela and Colombia at home in the last fixture, and Uruguay is still struggling with suspensions from their big Copa America brawl against Colombia. Remember, Darwin Núñez is out of the mix. Ugarte as well as Araujo are out of the mix. Added into this, you have a recent retirement in Luis Suarez, who has spoken out against Marcelo Bielsa and said that there is divisions within the camp. Bielsa has come in and wanted to put his stamp on a Uruguay squad that is in need of some renovation. As the old guard begins to retire, you see Edison Cavani, Muslera, as well as Matias Vecino, who he himself retired relatively early in his early 30s. But Luis Suarez used these recent slew of retirements as evidence that Marcelo Bielsa's style is creating a rift in the Uruguay camp. This has made many of his ex-players to either come out and add to the criticism or defend Marcelo Bielsa. A lot of his ex-Chileno players have come out in defense of him, and some have also come out criticizing Luis Suarez. What is true is that regardless of what the facts are, there's clearly a difference of opinion, and there is some friction as they phase out the old generation. They are not going quietly. And for this reason, I think it will be very difficult for Uruguay to come out of this fixture with a win. Anytime you play in Lima, it's a very difficult game as the home crowd is quite rowdy. Again, no Nunez, no Suarez, no Cavani means they will be struggling up front. And this should be a tie game as Peru fails to win yet again and will continue to be the only team without a win in the World Cup qualifiers. Now let's go over to match day 2, Colombia versus Chile in Barranquilla. Another incredible fixture, and one where Chile will have to come out with everything if they're to take anything from Colombia at home. We saw just how hard and hot it is to win in Colombia. The yellow-clad crowd makes it very difficult for anyone to go into Colombia and come out with points. All-time, Chile leads this fixture with 16 wins, 16 ties, and 11 wins in Colombia's favor. But they only beat Colombia once in Colombia in World Cup qualifying. That was back in 2009. They're 1-3-4 all-time in Colombia. And back in 2009, that was the beginning of their golden generation. I think Colombia should win very easy, and this may be the straw that breaks the camel's back for Gareca, as he is still looking to find his way in a Chile team, which he took over controversially after coaching Peru for several years, who of course are the bitter rivals of Chile. Next up, we have Paraguay versus Venezuela in Asunción. Paraguay lead this fixture, 19 wins all time, 4 ties, and 6 wins to Venezuela. Paraguay's coming off a red-hot win versus Brazil and a tie against a very young and impressive Uruguay team who have been stale since the Copa America. Venezuela have won 2 of the past 3 World Cup qualifiers away at Paraguay. Despite this, I believe Paraguay will show just how hard it is to play in Defensores del Chaco, their stadium in Asunción. Paraguay will win this fixture and continue to climb up the table. Next up, we have Argentina versus Bolivia. This is another fixture that Argentina has dominated historically. 31 wins, 5 ties, and 7 to Bolivia. However, Bolivia has only ever tied once in Argentina, going all the way back to 2011 for the World Cup qualifiers. It's safe to say that Argentina should win with no problems. As you see, whenever they lose a game, they do tend to win their next few games. And I don't think Bolivia will be a very tough opponent for them. However, Bolivia, who is the team of the moment in South America, should not be taken lightly. With that said, as Messi comes back into the fold, his aura will be just too much as the Argentina players really feed off of his presence. I believe that this should be a party in Buenos Aires as Argentina easily beats Bolivia and continues their winning ways. Next up, we have Brazil versus Peru in Brazil. 38 wins all time for Brazil, 9 ties, and only 5 wins ever for Peru. Peru beat Brazil in a friendly in Brazil in 2019. The time before they won in Brazil was all the way back in 1985. This is a match where Brazil absolutely needs to show their home crowd that they are serious contenders. They're bouncing back from a slew of very poor results dating back from before the Copa America. Brazil doesn't often lose at home. In fact, the only time they've ever lost at home was against Argentina earlier in this World Cup qualifiers. They do tend to always get results at home. I believe that this will be a win for them, a much needed victory as they get back into form. And finally, the last match, Uruguay versus Ecuador in Montevideo. This is the game of the second match day. All time, Uruguay leads 32 wins, 11 ties, 8 losses. Ecuador has never won away in Uruguay in World Cup qualifiers. In fact, Uruguay has 8 wins and 3 ties at home against Ecuador. With that being said, the Uruguay camp again is in a bit of disarray, and Ecuador is a team with a very high trajectory that is a team with a very high trajectory and has been quietly very solid in the World Cup qualifiers. Of course, they have the 3-point deduction, so their position in the table isn't quite reflective of their actual performance. I think that Ecuador has enough to go in and get a tie in Uruguay as Uruguay continues to crawl and accumulate points in a very uninspiring way as they just want to get over the bans that they received in the Copa America without losing too many points. This game has a draw written all over it. The expected standings, if all of my predictions come true, will be as follows. Argentina would continue to sit in first place, sitting on 24 points, adding 6 points to their total from 2 wins. Colombia in second place, 20 points, adding 4 additional points and keeping their undefeated record intact at 31 games. Uruguay continues in third position, sitting at 17 points, adding 2 to their total from 2 ties and what would be 4 ties in a row. Brazil leapfrogs into fourth place, sitting at 16 points, adding 6 points to their total. Ecuador in fifth place with 15 points, adding 4 points to their total from a win and a draw. Paraguay in sixth and final automatic World Cup qualifying position, sitting with 12 points, adding 3 to their total. Bolivia sitting in the 7th spot, playoff position, with 10 points, adding 1 point to their total. Venezuela sitting at 10 points, adding 0 points to their total. Chile sitting at 5 points, also failing to add any points to their total and falling further away from contention. And Peru in last place with 4 points despite adding 1 point to their total and not having any wins yet in World Cup qualifier. So what do you think? Who will win? Who will lose? Do you agree or disagree with my predictions? One thing's for sure, the South American qualifiers have been fantastic and we're in for some excellent matches on October 10th and October 15th as we get closer to determining who will qualify for the 2026 World Cup. Vamos!